Sangha meeting, the 8th or the 9th? Ninth. That's the thing you all know. But come in person if you can. It's at my house. It's just nice to be together in person. And if you're far away, and you're going to be on our big TV screen, so you'll be right there with us too. Let's chant the Sandokai. So it's on page 8, and we're going to put it up on the screen. Harmony of difference and equality. The mind of the great sage of India is intimately transmitted from west to east, while human faculties are sharp or dull. The way has no northern or southern ancestors. The spiritual source shines clear in the light. The branching streams flow on in the dark. Grasping at things is surely delusion. According with sameness, not enlightenment. All the objects of the senses interact and yet do not. Interacting brings involvement. Otherwise, each keeps its place. Sight, being quality and form. Sounds differ as pleasing or harsh. Refined and common speech come together in the dark. Clear and murky phrases are distinguished in the light. The 4 elements return to their natures, just as a child returns to its mother. Fire beats, wind moves, water wets, earth is solid, eye and sights, ear and sounds, nose and smells, tongue and taste. Thus with each and everything, depending on these roots, the leaves spread forth, trunk and branches share the essence, revered in common, each has its speech. In the light there is darkness, but do not take it as darkness. In the dark there is light, but do not see it as light. Light and dark oppose one another, like the front and back foot in walking. Each of the myriad things has its merit, expressed according to function and place. Phenomena exist, oxen live fit. Principle responds, arrow points meet. Hearing the words, understand the meaning. Do not set up standards on your own. If you do not understand the way right before you, how will you know the path as you walk? Progress is not a matter of far or near, but if you are confused, mountains and rivers block your way. I respectfully urge you to study the history in vain, and pass your days and nights in vain. So it's a beautiful poem. And what's it have to do with what's going on? Because that was the intention of studying this at this time, that it help us. Didn't know how bad it was going to be. It's really bad. I mean, I think it's really bad what's happening. And so I'm going to start. We're going to start from the, we're on chapter the talk 6. I was so happy when I found this. It's at the end of talk 6. I find myself as a Buddhist, or what I think a Buddhist is. I a little hesitant to say how angry I am. I just feel angry at what's happening. So what is this anger, and how do we be angry that's not just more karmic impulse? So I'm going to tell Suzuki Roshi says how. I'm so happy. Our practice should not be just intellectual. Even if you practice hard, without this kind of understanding, your practice doesn't make much sense. Still, it is involved in the idea of somethingness. That's a great word, somethingness. To have an intellectual understanding is easy, but practicing with emotions is difficult because we easily stick to something emotionally. So this is a question and answer at the end, and a student says, when I see a situation in which one person seems to be hurting another, I become emotionally upset. Am I becoming upset because I'm not seeing the situation as it actually is? If I were seeing it as it actually is, would I not be upset? In other words, if you were kind of enlightened, you could transcend this whole thing and maybe it wouldn't bother you. Suzuki Roshi says, that is a very difficult question to answer. It is difficult to know whether one person is helping another in an appropriate way or not. If it is not appropriate, you will be upset. At least you will worry. But even when someone is helping another properly, you may be upset. That happens, you know. Student goes on asking more about being emotionally upset. If a person really sees things clearly, is there no situation that would upset that person emotionally? Upset emotionally? I don't think so, but affected, yes. There is a big difference between these two. A Buddha may be upset quite easily in the sense of being deeply affected. Isn't this great medicine? I think it's great. It's like, thank you, Suzuki Roshi just is kind of beaming down. A Buddha may be upset quite easily in the sense of being deeply affected. But when she is upset, it is not because of their attachments. Sometimes he will be very angry. Anger is allowed when it is Buddha's anger. You can imagine this is kind of tricky here. Sorry. But that anger is not the same as the anger we usually have. If a Buddha is not upset when he should be upset, that is also a violation of the precepts. When she needs to be angry, they must be angry. That is the characteristic of the Mahayana way of observing precepts. We say sometimes anger is like a sunset. Never heard that before. Even though it looks like anger, actually it is a beautiful red sunset. If anger comes from pure mind, from purity like a lotus, it is good. Complicated to discern, but really interesting, isn't it? I was remembering when I studied with Sultra Malioni in the Tibetan tradition, which works a lot with emotions and talks about emotions. There was somebody who was a political activist, somebody who was really politically active. And in Tibetan Buddhism, there are wrathful Buddhas and peaceful Buddhas, wrathful deities and peaceful deities. This person was really pushing at Sultram and said, why don't you just say that wrathful deities are angry? And Sultram wouldn't go there. She said, it's different. And you don't practice, I mean, in Tibetan, it's tiered, it's stepped. You do this and then you do this. I mean, Zen just throws you in. But she said, you don't practice with wrathful deities until you have a good solid base in peaceful deities. So I think that's our practice here, is we are grounding in big mind, deep heart, compassionate nature, Buddha nature, stabilizing so that we can find appropriate response without some idea of what it should look like, and with the most fundamental precept being do no harm. So we don't get less alive, we get more alive. I feel things now more deeply than I ever did. I feel more tender, I feel more grief, I feel more sadness, it feels more close. And when I see people being hurt in ways that just feel mean-spirited, I feel angry. And I also know enough, and so does everybody here, I think, is we don't want to make it worse. And reactivity is not what we're talking about. So that's why we practice, so we can find appropriate response. And that's why I'm so happy we're doing the Sandokai. So thank you for listening to me. So we are, that was at the end of chapter 6. The way that talk is titled, that Mel and Michael Wenger brought forward, is the boat is always moving. You notice this? We just want it to slow down or to stop. It's part of what's been going on, is it just feels like too much, just and it's things are always in motion. And here's the phrases we're working with tonight. They're actually some of my most favorite. I get so excited when I get to some of these phrases in the Sandokai that I just like, oh, I was waiting to get here. The 4 elements return to their natures just as a child turns to its mother. Fire heats, wind moves, water wets, earth is solid. So in Buddhist thought, there are 4 elements: fire, wind, water, and earth, and each has its own nature. Fire, as Suzuki Roshi describes it, is purity. It has a transformational element to it, aspect to it. Wind, the belief, and this comes out of, I'm sure, Chinese and Tao and Taoism, because that's what all of this sits on, Zen sits on top of, brings things to maturity. It encourages things to be more mature. Interesting, huh? The nature of water is to contain things. It's vast, and everything, including ourselves, exists within water. Interesting just to contemplate that we're born swimming in water. And we are what percentage of water? I mean, big. And earth, nature is solidness. So I was going to read you something Roshi had to say about this. According to Buddhism, if you analyze a thing into the smallest unit imaginable, that smallest final unit is called Gokumi. Now, he's writing this in 1970. I would imagine science and everything else is, we know a lot more than we knew before. And the Dalai Lama, I've always appreciated, has said that if science starts to prove something or reveal something that goes counter to the teachings should change. It's really, everything's moving, but so far, I mean, I don't know anything, but what I do read, it seems like it stays congruent, that there's something essential in these teachings. Okay. Gokumi, although sometimes defined as atom, it is not really the atom, because the atom is not the final unit, which I think we now know. I do not know the proper terms, but according to my understanding of modern physics, the smallest final unit of being has no weight or size. It is just electrical energy. Strangely enough, Buddhism has a similar idea. Although Gokumi has the 4 elements, fire, wind, water, and earth, it is not something solid. When we reach this point, we see that its nature is just emptiness. You can't grasp it. You can't make it into something. The four elements are just not material. They're energy or potential or readiness. Isn't that nice? I like it. It's just potential or readiness. This is Gokumi. To these four elements, we add the quality of emptiness. So fire, wind, water, and earth are all empty, empty of any essential self-existence or any clingable existence. Even though they are empty, from this emptiness, these four elements come into being. And as soon as these four come into being, right there is the final unit Gokumi. That is the Buddhist understanding of being. It looks as if we are talking about matter, but these elements are not just matter. They are both spirit and matter. Everything is spirit and matter. It's like, don't tell me this isn't here. Don't tell me we don't have a realm of form, but that's not it either. It's spirit, it's ungraspable. But if you tell me that's all that's here and you think you can go over caring about this realm of form and taking care of people and taking care of your life and your body, and that's not it either. In this spirit and matter, thinking mind is included. Thinking mind is a really important thing in Buddhism because we all believe it, right? I think, therefore I am. It's more like pay attention to your thoughts, and when you pay attention to your thoughts, they're really interesting, but mostly you're not going to think your way out of this situation. Thinking mind is included. Accordingly, emptiness includes both spirit and matter, both mind and object, both the subjective world and the objective world. Emptiness is the final being in which our thinking mind cannot reach. So the four elements return to their natures just as a child turns to its mother. So each element resumes its own nature because it's empty, and it arises out of emptiness. It's like this I don't know, dynamic play, dance. And one of the things I'm going to swim around a little bit here, and I'm probably not going to get to swim around as much as I want to swim around, but I want to swim around in this one because this is another one of my most favorite things. Is emptiness is called Prajnaparamita, and Prajnaparamita is the mother of all the Buddhas. So emptiness, mother Prajnaparamita, when we chant, when we go to the sitting and we chant, I'm just going to tell you it because I have these favorites and you have to indulge me because we say homage to the perfection of wisdom, the lovely, the holy. This is emptiness personified, and it's personified in the feminine, which is really kind of unusual in Buddhism and in traditional religions. So the perfection of wisdom, this is emptiness. This is her, the mother of the Buddhas. She gives light. Unstained, the entire world cannot stain her. She is a source of light, and from everyone in the triple world, she removes darkness. Most excellent are her works. She brings light so that all fear and distress may be forsaken, and disperses the gloom and darkness of delusion. She herself is an organ of vision. So it's like, this is a way to see the world, as you see the world through her eyes. And then you see the elements of fire and wind and whatever those other ones are. But you also see it as form, but you know that's it, but you know that's not quite it. So she's a way of seeing. She's the mother of all the Buddhas because she gives birth to the Buddhas, because she teaches us how to see in this way. Because when we see in this way, what we see is we see with love, and we see with interconnectedness, and we see with care and compassion. So everybody wants to go back into her arms and then reappear again, because then we just keep appearing as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and we want to help people, and we're less and less deluded and self-centered. Does that make sense? These things make me happy. So in the midst of being angry, this is it's simultaneous. Then you can risk feeling what you're feeling, because you know, well, you hope, you pray, you keep practicing that you're not going to act it out, because you also know everything's part of her, and she's part of everything, and you don't want to do harm, and you also want to find appropriate response, which is you find it in her. And that each element and everything is a momentary formation of her, and everything is Buddha nature. So we're always, and the Sandokai is always, does this make sense to you guys on screen too? I asked the people in the room. You sort of following me a little bit here. Yeah, okay. Everything is independent and dependent, because everything appears in subject object. This disappears, this, but everything is completely co-creating and co-arising each moment. So like a child from its mother, it's independent. Fire, Suzuki Roshi says, is independent in its nature of heat. You don't pretend fire is water. It's like fire is fire. Wind is independent in its nature of movement. Water in its nature of moisture. Earth in its nature of solidity. But completely interdependent, because they're all of her, and she is them. How connected and all these things that I want to tell you. Why do I want to tell you these things? So both sides are always true. I was actually listening to some kind of, or reading some kind of political argument today. And I mean, I'm very clear about which side is right. But you can also equally see where if you stepped over on the other side and that came out of your belief system, they think they're right. So I mean, that's sort of where we are, is so who's right, whose rightness is going to win here, which means you have to keep going deeper and living from a deeper place, because the level on which we're engaging here is not going to get us what we want, which is a world of love and care. And from the view of independency, which is Suzuki Roshi's word, everything exists with Buddha nature, no matter what happens in the world. It's all Buddha nature. It's all Buddha nature. And everybody has Buddha nature, and everybody is waking up to be a Buddha. Everybody, which just means you have to keep looking. Like, what is it? There's no way to explain it intellectually. But there is some, when we sit Zazen is the embodiment of, it's the relative. You sit this body down. This is me sitting. I'm not going to pretend it's not Chris. That would be really deluded. I sit this small self down in, I like to think, in the lap of the Buddha, in my Buddha nature, and And Buddha and Buddha nature is just a manifestation of Prajnaparamita, breathing in and out. And then more and more, there is this physical embodiment and heart energetic being of, I know exactly who I am. Well, I mean, I'm a deluded human being named Chris with my own karma and my own conditioning. And I don't know who I am because I'm a Buddha, but that doesn't make any sense. I'm just this person that's waking up to who I already am. And then you look around the room and you see everybody else doing that. And it gives you hope. Because we may be doing it this way, but in another tradition, they do it that way, but it comes from the same heart. And that's what's important here. So Suzuki Roshi says there's no way to explain or understand things by explaining them individually. That's just intellectual. You have to have an actual feeling for it. So what we're talking about is you have to have a felt sense for this, that we keep coming back to, that actually is palpable. You can taste it, you can feel it. If you can just appreciate each thing one by one, then what you have is pure gratitude. It's not just the flower, but Buddha itself. And in the same way, what exists is just a flower and no one to see it and nothing to be seen. And so there's a continuous feeling of gratitude. So now I have to decide whether I'm going to go down a little road. That maybe I'll just go partway down the little road, and then I'll let you guys talk. So the flower is some of you may Zen has a lineage and ancestors, and Suzuki Roshi is we have him up on the altar now. He's one of our ancestors, and then you go back, and then you go through Dogen, and then you go back and back. But it starts with Shakyamuni Buddha, who's the first Buddha of this era, but someplace along the way in the Lotus, Buddha shocked everybody and said, I'm not the first Buddha. There's been Buddhas before me, and there are 7 Buddhas before me, and there are just and lots of people didn't like that, and they all walked out. But that's okay. That's what we human beings do. But one of our ancestors is Mahakashapa. It's the story of the first transmission of Zen from Buddha to Mahakashapa, and it's such a beautiful story. It's another one of you can tell I have favorites. Maybe you know this story. Before an assembly of 80,000 on Spiritual Mountain, the Buddha raised a flower and blinked his eyes. No one knew his meaning, and all remained silent. Then Kashapa alone broke into a smile, and the Buddha said, I have the treasury of the eye of truth, the ineffable mind of nirvana, and the formless teachings of complete illumination, and I entrust it all to Kashapa, just because Buddha raised a flower. And everybody else in the assembly, nobody else responded, but Mahakashapa smiled. It was like something happened that wasn't intellectual, that wasn't, it was a felt sense that happened in just a raising of a flower and a blinking or a winking. And Mahakashapa smiled. These moments are happening all the time. Whether you know it or not. Okay, I'm just going to read you this little bit. Leaving aside the raising of the flower for the moment, everyone should clearly understand the blinking of the eyes. You raise your eyebrows and blink your eyes in the ordinary course of things, and Buddha blinked his eyes when he raised the flowers. When he raised the flower, these are not separate at all. You're talking and smiling, Kashapa breaking into a smile are not different at all. We are being human beings all the time. Blinking, winking, raising flowers, saying, how are you? Showing up, whatever we're doing. This is just what we human beings do, but we miss it, right? Think, oh, that was just like whatever. But if you do not clearly understand the one who raised their eyebrows and blinked their eyes, then in India, there's Shakyamuni Buddha, there's Kashyapa, and in your own mind, there's skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. Many optical illusions, so many floating dusts, you have never been free of them for countless eons, and you surely will be sunk in them for eons and eons. If you think this happened, and that happened, and there's this person, and that happened, and that didn't happen, and I like it, and I don't like it, which is, of course, what we're doing, and of course, what's going on all the time. But if you think that's not, if you think that's all that's going on, you're going to miss the whole world. That's Sandokai. It's all happening simultaneously. And because something happened in the meeting, which is where everything happens, it happens in relationship and in meeting. Buddha and Mahakashapa somehow completely met heart to heart, warm hand to warm hand, warm heart to warm heart, which is a Sandokai, which is the two hands together. And that's actually the truth of every moment. It's just that we mostly miss it. So let me just tell you, see if there's anything else here. Since before you were born, it has been pointed out directly and communicated simply, extending over all time, met with everywhere. And if you can know it, the flesh of Shakyamuni's Buddha's body and holding up the flower will still be warm, and Mahakashapa's smile will be renewed. Old Shakyamuni Buddha is with you all the time, whatever you are doing. This is here all the time. He's conversing and exchanging greetings with you, never apart from you for a moment. Thank you for indulging me. It's in the transmission of the light, which is just full of all the stories of the ancestors, the lineage, but the one about the flowers, dear to my heart. Okay, we've got some time for you guys to talk about this now. But maybe we should go back to what's the difference between being upset emotionally and deeply affected? I mean, you can talk about any of this because the ground of it is what I was trying to do with all of these different teachings. But in fact, how do we and how do we practice with? How do you know when you are upset emotionally? And what's the difference? And is there a difference in quality? And how would you discern it? Being deeply affected. A Buddha may be upset quite easily in the sense of being deeply affected. But when she is upset, it is not because of his attachments. There's something to do here about attachment. What's it feel like in your body and heart and mind? That question makes sense? Or enough sense to be able to enter it and maybe swim around in it for a little bit? Okay. There's no right answer. Just See what comes up for you. So let's do in groups of 3 and you have, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes and I'll